Hey, welcome back to the channel. In a previous video, I had mentioned the gear that I use, and one of them was that 150 to 600 contemporary Sigma lens. What I'd like to do today is kind of go over that a little more in depth. I've been using this lens now for about 2 years and taken thousands and thousands of photos with it. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I love it. I bet this thing, well, actually I know this one stays on my camera at all times. Because I take it with me just about everywhere I go. So you never know when you're gonna run into something to take a photo of, especially, this time of year, spring. It's starting to get spring, things are moving around a lot more. So today, yeah, like I said, I wanna kind of go a little more in depth into this lens. So obviously this is it. It's 150 to 600, and if you put this on a crop sensor camera, you basically have, especially if it's a 1.5, you have a 225 to 900. So it's got quite a bit of power, and it does reach right out there. So if you end up buying one of these, there's a few things that they come with which are very beneficial. We've got, kind of hard to see it, got the collar so that you can attach this to a tripod. That'll help with balance. I also use it a lot when I'm hand holding. I'll hang on to this as a handle. Usually a rear cover and a lens hood attaches on and off, and also a lens cover on the end. And to adjust this, this is the Nikon, so it's going to have a counterclockwise rotation to extend the camera. And you can usually get it with one rotation of a hand, but you do have to kind of reach over. There's also, I have all my camouflage on here, but this ring right here, actually I have it covered up. Let's this ring here is the manual, so it still has that. Now let's go into turn the camera around, and then we'll go into the individual selection buttons on the side a little better. If you like what you're hearing or seeing, and you want to hear more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments about this lens, I'll be happy to help. Just leave me a comment and I'll get back to you and answer that to the best of my abilities. So let's move on to the next section. All right, let's go over the individual selection levers we have here. So at the top, we have the focus, and we have three different selectors. We've got AF, that's obviously your autofocus. We also have MF, which is manual focus. And in the middle, there's an MO, which is manual override. 90% of the times I use the autofocus, and it works very well. And then moving down, so this is your focal length, or your distance. So we've got, on the very end here, we've got a 2.8 to 10. So if you're shooting photographs and you've got something that's, it's gonna be close, like you're in a blind and you've got, birds coming to a feeder, situations like that. And I'll actually have an example of another situation where that the 2.8 to 10 comes in handy. One thing to note is, so this thing has a minimum focus of 58 centimeters, which comes out to about 22 and a half inches. And so if you're trying to get something real close, then you're going to have to use that setting. Your next is 10 meters to infinity. That's kind of the same thing. If you've got something that's going to be greater than 10 meters out to infinity, that's a good option. What I use most of the time for the wildlife stuff is full. I also use full for when I'm shooting the moon, any kind of astrophotography. I'll set it up on the full. The next setting is your OS. So I don't know if anybody else has this issue, but I know I do for sure. If I'm on a tripod, I have to have that selection set to off. If it just seems like if I'm using on the tripod and I leave it on 1 or 2, I don't get the sharp pictures. You know, they just have that slight little bit of blur to them. So for me, if I'm shooting on a tripod, I'm always on off. If I'm handheld, I usually just leave it on 1. It could 1 or 2 is fine. I believe 1 is more like a static situation where it's something, you know, your subject is just kind of sitting there, and then 2 is more for panning, like birds in flight. But I do just fine with leaving it on 1. And this next one is the custom. Now, me personally, I leave that on off. I don't have it calibrated for anything custom. I do not have the device to calibrate this lens. I think they call it a dock. I bought this lens used, so it didn't come with one. One other thing to note is you have a lock here. I know I went over that in one of the other videos. So you basically have 2 points where it'll lock. It's going to lock at 150, which is the shortest it'll go, and then it also locks at 600. So when it's wide open, lens is fully extended, you can lock that as well. It does not lock in between. I know a lot of times if I'm walking and I have this on the tripod over my shoulder, or even if I'm just handheld carrying it, I keep it all the way compressed, and then I put the lock on. That way it doesn't creep out on me, because you could, you know, you're walking and just walking, the movement will let that lens, just the weight of it will extend it fully. So that's about the only times I use that. So let's bring up a frog. I was walking on a trail and these frogs were so thick they were jumping everywhere. I mean, there were so many of them, they were landing on your feet, on your legs. And anyways, I seen this frog on the trail and I wanted to get a picture of it. But I had just been taking pictures of birds that were a little further out there, and I had the camera on him and I'm zooming and trying to focus and he just wouldn't focus. And then it dawned on me that, oh yeah, I had it on the 1 or the full setting. So I had to move that dial to the 2.8 to 10 and then was able to get a really good picture. And you can see the detail, the color. Next, let's look at some wildlife that I've used, like the 10 to the infinity setting. They were still out there quite a ways, but close enough to get good quality pictures. Actually, some of them up behind me, like this bighorn ram in South Dakota, the eagle in Minnesota, use that setting, the 10 meter to infinity, and it still captures some really nice detail. And let's look at the moon. I don't take a lot of pictures of the moon, but with this camera you get some pretty good pictures, so it's fun to do once in a while. But with the setting on full, then that's what I typically use. Actually, that's always what I use when I'm shooting the moon. And you, like I said, we'll look at this picture and you can kind of see the detail. I've thought about upgrading, but at this point it really doesn't make a lot of sense. I would be upgrading just to say I did. If the gear you've got is working, then there's really no need to upgrade. So that's why I hold on to this 150 to 600 Sigma, because it has done everything that I could ask it to do, and it's just a great budget lens. So in closing, I would really recommend this lens for anybody that's looking to get into wildlife photography, or even if they've been in it for a while and they want to, maybe get a longer zoom, and this would be a perfect lens to pick up. Like I said, right now they are fairly cheap on the market. Like I paid, when I bought this used, it was $850, and they're down into the $500-600 range now, and you can find them pretty easily on just about any camera website, especially the used market. And they're still available new. So stay tuned for the next video, and y'all have a good day and happy shooting.